So you're thinking about competing in jiu-jitsu. When should you actually start competing? What's the benefits to competing? Should you even do it? And I have no idea what I'm doing in competition. So in this video, we're going to break down when you should start competing, maybe some pros and cons to competing in your jiu-jitsu career. How's it going, everybody? My name is Chasen Hill. I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. I've been teaching and training jiu-jitsu now for 13 plus years. So if you guys like all things jiu-jitsu, I release weekly videos every week. So make sure you smash that like and subscribe button down below. That way you never miss the latest content. Also hit that bell icon so that way you know when the next video is ready to be released. So in today's video, I want to break down this idea about when should I start competing. This is one of the most common questions that I get from my students in person, and often some questions that I've gotten online. Students don't know, should they wait till they've received a certain amount of promotions since they've been training so many times, or should they just start competing right off the bat right away? And these are all very complicated questions to answer and very also subjective based upon who you are. So let's break it down right now. So the first thing is that there is really no true number one answer to say when you should start competing. Everyone is 100% different in their jiu-jitsu journey. People might get into jiu-jitsu for self-defense, they might get into it for fitness, and have no idea that there's even a competition. I know personally, whenever I started training jiu-jitsu, I knew there was things like the UFC and MMA, but I didn't even know that there was a whole jiu-jitsu competition scene. I mean, I knew there was a wrestling scene, but I had no idea about a competition jiu-jitsu scene. I didn't know what the points were. I didn't even know how they worked. So it can kind of be overwhelming sometimes. So until you start training jiu-jitsu, you may not even know there was a competition. The next thing about competing is you want to make sure that you've actually had some realistic time training jiu-jitsu. I think it's pretty safe to say that you don't want to just do 1 or 2 jiu-jitsu classes before you start competing. You want to actually have a little bit of mat time underneath of your belt. If you're going to hold me down and give you a so much amount of time idea, I guess if you've been training 3 or 4 days a week pretty consistently for 3-4 months roughly, now you probably have enough idea about what jiu-jitsu is and you kind of know the basic concept and you're going to be able to go compete. Now, you may not do well, but theoretically you could. I'm not a big fan of sending students out there after only a month or 2 of training. I think they need to be training often and getting enough information to be able to go out there and at least try to implement what they've been learning. Now, the next idea about competing is that you want to make sure that you're actually sparring adequately. A lot of times in some jiu-jitsu schools, whenever you first start doing jiu-jitsu, they're going to be a little bit more drill-based, especially if you've never done jiu-jitsu before and you walk in and you're going to a basics class or beginner's class. They might only do very light sparring, very focused sparring, or no sparring at all, depending on the class. So you want to make sure that you have actually done an adequate amount of time of sparring or open mats and actual resistance rolling before you step on the mat and start doing a competition. So now let's talk about why you might do a competition and what are some of the pros of doing a competition in the jiu-jitsu realm. One of the biggest pros for doing jiu-jitsu competitions is that it's going to test you, it's going to push you, and it's going to see how much of the information and knowledge you can actually apply on a resisting opponent. The reason why tournaments are good for this is because we can safely assume that if the tournament has run well and you filled out the paperwork right, that you're going to be competing against someone who is your weight, your size, your age, and your skill level. And that's a way to measure your level of proficiency. It's not the only way, but it's one way. So if you're a 2-stripe white belt and you go out there and grapple against another 2-stripe white belt or 3-stripe white belt, then, you know, if you tap them or they tap you, it's a good metric to see what you do well or what you're maybe what you don't do well. So the competition allows you to kind of push yourself and test yourself against someone who is the same skill as you. Now, you could do this in a group class environment as well, but often in a group class environment, we're trying to help each other. We're not necessarily trying to hurt each other. So in a competition environment, you're getting 100% resistance and you're getting 100% of someone who's trying to get after you. So at times, it can feel just like a totally different scenario. Another reason why you might want to think about doing a competition is it can be a good goal setter for people. A lot of times students don't know how to set other goals inside of the gym. They don't know how to realistically use their training partners. They don't know how to develop a technique from start to end, and they don't know how to measure another term of progress. But a lot of times the competition can do those things for you. I could say, hey, I want to do this competition in the next, 4 or 5 weeks. So that's my goal. I'm really going to try this training plan and try to implement these techniques and this strategy. And it gives a student like a clear goal with a start date and an end date of what they're trying to accomplish. And that's great. A competition is awesome for that. However, I don't think it's great for long-term success in jiu-jitsu. Often, I think this is where students get caught into the trap of the tournament world. Now, we see this in the jiu-jitsu world because maybe my coach was a really big competition guy, or this guy I admire at the gym is a big competition guy. But I'm telling you guys, most of the people that compete in a jiu-jitsu competition, especially at white and blue belt, never compete anymore. And a lot of times a big reason what drives them to quitting is because they had such poor success at a tournament, or their coach only based their progression based upon that. So tournaments are not end-all be-all ways to determine your progression. They're a tool, just like everything else in jiu-jitsu is a tool. So I recommend that you don't only use tournaments for that, but they're definitely an easy way for you to be able to set a goal and to try to drive yourself and to be able to accomplish something in jiu-jitsu. The next thing is that it's just a mental test. If you've never done a jiu-jitsu tournament before, or really had someone kind of attack you in that way, you're going to feel this giant anxiety dump, and you're going to feel all of your muscles tense up, and you're going to feel this crazy exhaustion that you've never felt before. And it's mentally challenging as well too. You're trying your best to stay as focused as you can. You're really preparing, you're psyching yourself up. So the ability to go through that kind of stress and that kind of mental fatigue and mental preparation, I think is very beneficial for people. Now, often if they do it too much, it can actually cause them to having a negative association with jiu-jitsu competitions. Some people don't handle stress like that really well. Some people don't want to be under that kind of pressure, and that's what causes them to quit jiu-jitsu. So I think having kind of a healthy balance between it is always going to be what's recommended, but sometimes going through that, if you've never done it before, and saying, oh man, at least I know what that's like, and I've done that at least once or twice in my life, and I don't ever want to willingly do it again, but at least I can say I've done it, I know what it's like, and then you can kind of give yourself a pat on the back and a round of applause. You should be proud of doing something like that. So what are your guys' thoughts about jiu-jitsu competition? Do you think there is a time that people should start? Do you think they should wait till, mid-white belt? Should they wait till blue belt? When's a good time to start training for competitions? You guys let me know down in the comments below. Now let's get into, let's say that you are wanting to compete in a jiu-jitsu competition and you've never done it before. What are some good things that you can prepare for your first jiu-jitsu competition? Well, here's the thing. The first time you get out there on the mat, you're going to be totally terrified. You're going to get deer in the headlights, and you're going to absolutely freeze. This doesn't always happen to people if they have previous grappling experience like wrestling or judo or one-on-one competition. But for a lot of people, whenever they first start training jiu-jitsu, this is their first one-on-one competition style of an experience. Usually we're used to doing team sports like basketball, baseball, and football. So it can be kind of weird that everything is out there on you. So this causes this deer in the headlights and kind of stressful anxiety environment. So some things that I recommend to help with that is having a regular training schedule. When you're going to go compete for a competition, you should be upping your training. You can't just stay to your standard 2 days a week. That won't be enough. And the reason why I'm saying it's not enough is because you need to learn more, or really even spar more, but you need to put yourself under that excess stress and that excess pressure. So saying that, man, now I got to train 4 days a week instead of 2 days a week is extremely important. Giving yourself that extra stress to meet is extremely important. Now, after the tournament, you can go back to training 2 days a week, but when you're getting ready for the tournament, you need to be upping your training and making sure your techniques are refined and you're putting that extra stress on yourself. So that way you're ready for when tournament day comes. The next big thing that I recommend is students try to develop some kind of a game plan. Now, like I said, when you first get out there, you're going to get deer in the headlights, but one way to help lessen that effect is by having a game plan. So my personal preference for students is they should have one takedown, and then they should have from that takedown a type of guard pass, a type of top position they're trying to work into some kind of submission. Now, it's not always going to be perfect, but at least now you have something that you're going to be trying over and over again. Then, of course, you need to have a couple of tricks up your sleeve. What if you get put into the guard? What if you get put into the bottom of the mount? What if you get put into the bottom of side control? How are you going to escape? What's your go-to ones to have? But you don't want to be focusing on a million techniques when you're first preparing for competition. You want to have a pretty easy 4-step game plan, takedown to pass to control to submission, that you're really, really working. It can differ between gi and no gi, depending if you're doing both in the tournament. But here's a secret. I recommend having kind of the same plan for each one. Make it simple on yourself. If you just need to adapt the gi takedown for the gi, great. Adapt the no-gi takedown, fine. Submissions, adapt it, but have relatively the same game plan the first time you're going out there. One of the last pieces of advice I can give you is try to work with a coach who you really respect and is going to help you with that. Tell your coach what your game plan is and see if they have any potential feedback or advice they can give you around that specific plan. This is one thing that I know so many students don't do. When I've helped students prepare for competition and I show up to the day and I'm going to coach them, I'm like, man, what's your plan? And then they have this crazy detailed thing that I've never even seen before that they watched on some YouTube video on something. And then when it comes to it, and then I watch them in the match, I try to coach them through it, I have no idea what they're trying. It's not that I don't know the technique, but you just did a poor job at articulating it to me 5 minutes before the match was about to start. So I couldn't help you, give you advice on it. So try to have a dialogue with a coach or with someone who you're going to be training with. And this could be done as simple as the day of the competition. Just don't do it 5 minutes before you step out onto the mat. Try to give a little bit of preparation to the coach or the person who's going to be helping you. So knowing when to compete in a jiu-jitsu tournament is very subjective. Like I said earlier, it really depends on you. You know, they start tournaments as young as 4 years old to, you know, you can compete in some masters division that have 60-plus-year-old people competing. So there's not really an age that's restricted. I just think it's the amount of intensity or serious that you put into competing. But these are just some helpful things for you guys to be able to think about if you're thinking about competing in jiu-jitsu. Speaking of competing and needing more help and needing a coach, if that's something that you're looking for or you think you'd benefit from, I do have a coaching program online where I help students develop training plans and competition plans depending on what they're trying to focus on, that I've successfully helped students with. I've had blue belts and purple belts and white belts all use my training plan to success. It's really about more working with you, and we collaborate together to figure out what's going to be best for you. So if you think that's something that you would like or want to get more information on, make sure you visit my link down in the description below and we can get you guys hooked up. That's the end of this video. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.